Well, it didn't quite stick the landing, but there we go.
If it works, it works.
Yeah, I was on a different browser, so I didn't
Oh.
see. Okay, let's see. It's supposed to be like a notification that comes up. Oh yeah, welcome
That's
to
kind of good.
Giftcast, and it will be live on YouTube. It'll be live on Twitch, and maybe live on Facebook. And I'm trying to figure that out right now because I don't know how that works. We like to do things on the fly,
I
but
mean,
don't
it
see
could work.
popping up. Video.
Oh, we already have one person in chat. They can hear things.
Nice. We are here.
Hey,
Live, yes.
it's reasonably live.
Reasonably live.
Filmed in front of a live audience, actually.
Nice. Ah, there we go. So I'll close that so we can actually see the chat. Lord Draconum, good to see you. We are. Yeah. So I'm David. The other guy's Ivan.
I remain Ivan for now.
Remaining Ivan.
These
And
things
we are
open for discussion.
Yeah. We're going to talk about Kickstarter today, which
Yeah.
you've done a lot of research, and I've just got a lot of feelings. And I'm just going to express them. And we have a slideshow with our hobby progresses for the last few weeks because it was an off week last week.
Yeah, it's more like a hobby plan in my case. But it is progress because I acquired the stuff that will be hobbied. So,
yeah, and you put it on a table. And that's,
Yes.
I mean, for what you did, that's exactly what you need to do. So you're halfway there.
So, well, yeah. So there's a little bit of like story that goes through it, I suppose. So, do you want to bring up the thing?
And I don't know. I never asked actually if you had anything to talk about at the end of the show. Any promotions? Anything?
Oh, okay. I'm sure I'll think of something unless the like moaning about Kickstarter ends up like eating the whole time.
Well, I might. Okay, so let's jump into the slideshow, which means I need to make myself embiggened, and you could be little tiny Ivan.
Micro.
There we go. There's tiny Ivan.
Hey.
And I will switch over to the slideshow. How's that looking?
Hey, that is looking good. So what have we got there?
Excellent. So let's see. Probably about, wasn't this Monday? Last Monday. So about 2 weeks ago, we arranged to have some games of what we call Jank and Flank. So it's the one-page rules, Age of Fantasy regiments.
Oh.
And I pulled together my old undead army, which there'll be a few pictures of up next when I have it on the tabletop. But I was missing a few guys, so I brought out my old Lich and a couple of mummies I'd picked up off eBay a few years ago.
Awesome.
And there's the control.
It's nice to be able to get like some old minis or an old army even like.
Yeah. I'd originally won I got third place in a painting contest with that Lich, which is pretty good because he got beat out by 2 dragons. And he's a little tiny guy.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, but the paint had all gotten shipped over the years and stuff, so I had to strip it and repaint it. So that's what I came up with.
He may have been small, but his heart is big.
That's right. He won the hearts of at least a few, enough to get third. And so I slapped them all together over the weekend before the game.
How many of these minis had you actually like used before in like a game?
Oh, I've used Lich many times.
Oh.
The mummies were new for me, but I have other mummies I had used before. It was all 5th edition, and a little bit is 6th.
Oh, okay.
Not really 6th because my undead army didn't fit into 6th. It was I didn't have enough of either. Yeah, I mean they come out every once in a while, but they're pretty brittle. There we go. So I got a few picks. I was fighting against another undead force, but it was all modern stuff. His was just strictly the vampiric undead, is what they call them for.
Yeah.
So he's got a pretty good array there. The table is looking nice. I mean, that's what you expect out of a rank and flank. You need room to maneuver.
Yeah, it's always kind of, there is like a quality to rank and flank games where they just look good. It's like, I think it's just like it always makes me feel, like being a little kid and reading White Dwarf and looking at the.
Yeah, that's how I felt too. I was so giddy before the game. I was very excited to get them. My old movement trays and stuff.
Did your undead die again, or did they?
Well, they did die.
Well, sorry. That's
I did lose that game, but it was okay. And so, you can see like there's a huge size discrepancy though. Like modern bases, modern movement trays versus really old ones.
That's pretty good. I mean, I guess if it all works out,
Yeah, in the end, it's all jank and flank, so you don't.
Yeah. Who cares? It's more important to get the game going, right?
Yeah. So my unit of mummies turned out to be pretty powerful, actually, in the game. So they annihilated some dudes before getting annihilated by a dragon.
That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
And more cavalry picks. I had my skull chucker on a hill, as you do.
Mm-hmm.
And then
you gotta have some artillery fire.
Anything. They are pretty ineffective usually. I don't know what it is, but I've never had it work out for me. But I always love having
That's fair. So there are some units that are like that where you just enjoy taking them even though they are garbage.
Yeah. I take it 100% of the time and it does 1% of the work.
But it's all about the attitude.
Yeah, that's right. The Lich, though, he was really good. I invested pretty well into his spellcasting abilities. So he ended up... Oh, yeah, that's right. The funny thing about this game is there's an ability called... it's called some sort of curse. So it gives 12 hits on a model or a unit. And you need to roll a 6 to pull it off in this case. Because when you have a spellcaster, they have like a target number you have to roll over, and then the other spellcaster can use some of their points to raise that roll. So each time I tried to cast it, it had to be 6. And in all 4 rounds, I managed to cast it. I just kept rolling 6s constantly. And his guy on the dragon was also a wizard, who also was a spellcaster 3. And he also managed to pull it off every single time he tried to cast it. So we just annihilated each other with this one spell that's really hard to cast.
That's pretty. Yeah, that was pretty epic, though. Just come in with the magical laser.
There we go. That's the end. So that's the end of the game. We didn't annihilate each other, but in the end, he scored more objectives, so he won.
Yeah. Well, that was a pretty good outing, though.
And I wish I knew photo stacking, because that would have been a pretty awesome shot, I think. Yeah. That's the next wizardry I got to figure out. Then I got up to some battle tech painting, so I finished these guys off. These ones are the craft paints with Tamiya panel liner through a fountain pen.
And then, I think you were working on those last time.
Yeah, so now they're all done. Actually, they are finished. Currently, I got all the basing and everything done, but this was the last picture I took. I did a little rush job this morning, but I think it pops nicely.
Oh, I think they look outstanding. They look lovely on the table.
Yeah. And then this Monday, we were playing Saga, which was pretty exciting.
Yeah, Saga was a good time.
Yeah, I'd been building a Oathmark army, so I had a lot of miniatures ready to go. I just had to get a few more done up.
Yeah. Isn't that funny when you can use like the spillover from one army to build a different project?
Yeah, I mean, that's the way to do it. I mean, if you can plan that out, then you're golden in the hobby.
Yeah.
But he changed the rules. So instead of being a regular Saga warband, it was going to be a learning warband. So then I had to paint more dudes, which is okay because I just crushed them all. I got everything painted. I got all the ones for the one band plus all these guys done.
Gotcha.
So they're looking pretty good. Some snappy fellows.
And they might come in real handy when fantasy KPS is done.
That's right. They will pull triple duty minimum.
And after that, they can also probably stack up in Lion Rampant.
Yeah.
Or what's the fantasy?
And Dragon Rampant.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're really clever, you just build an army that works for both.
Have you played Saga before? Do you know about it?
It's been a really long time, so I don't actually know if it was. I don't even know if there's multiple editions, but yes, I have played it.
Okay. Yeah, it's on second edition now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this was good lord, a very long time ago because I was still in Portland, so it may have been the first edition. It was really fun though.
Yeah. It
was one of those games where I ended up not investing in it just because we were doing a lot at the time. So it's you have time to do 3 good games and there's 12 to pick from. Kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, it was really cool, and I kind of liked it better because at the time there was a bunch of because I feel like it wasn't that around that time with Lion Rampant and Dragon Rampant and Dex Bellorum. There was a bunch that came out at the same time almost.
Let's say hello to Techno Scald. How's it going? And Lord Draconum actually is the reason why I wanted to play Saga, because he gave me the dice. So you know that you have a battle board, you need your special dice.
Yes.
You can kind of jury rig it, but I think that it doesn't really flow necessarily as well.
It's a lot played it. Nicer to have the proper stuff, I think.
Yeah, so it's really cool. I mean, assigning the dice to the different abilities and then playing it out through that. It was nice. This one.
Yeah, it's good.
But
good time.
The buy-in, I mean, it's so hard to figure out what you need to do for Saga unless you know somebody, and you can't just like sample it. There's no like starter army online.
Oh yeah, you kind of have to.
Yeah, which they really should get on. I think like just build like a little 2-player starter. Comes with battle boards and stuff.
Maybe they could Kickstarter one.
Yeah, that's right. They should definitely think about that. And let's see here. So I just only took one picture, but it was a very minimalist board.
That's a lot of times when we've played a game and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take like a bunch of pictures. And then I end up taking like one in turn 2 and then nothing else because we just get like busy playing.
Yeah, I try for learning games not to take too many pictures.
Yeah,
I just want to concentrate
on like actually learning the game.
Yeah. But in Saga, I mean, this minimalist terrain works out because technically there's no shooting. He had Vikings, I had Scots.
Oh, okay.
I have an ability I can use that makes everybody shoot, but otherwise, you're just charging each other to fight it out.
Scrabbing it out with axes.
Yeah, and I told him that was my bridge, and then I fought him, and I took that bridge, and I won. So,
hey, look at that.
The mighty Scots.
Heck yeah.
And then we're on to your hobby here.
Yeah, which unfortunately is a lot less painted, but this is the start to what will become a Normandy village. It was actually some ruins that I got off some dude on Etsy. I told myself that I was actually going to like shield the account because the prints were really nice and they were quite cheap. But then I forgot to look up what the name was. However, if you search for, so I was poking around because I had bought some like 20 millimeter tanks on eBay from some dude, and then he like went out of business, or maybe his account got suspended. I don't know. Then I found a different dude to buy some tanks from. They were really cheap, but they weren't bad quality, but they weren't like great either. They were fine for like $10 for a tank. Then I went on like Etsy to look around for like 3D printed terrain to see what I could find, and there was like 10,000 things of it, but it was all like Warhammer shit with like skulls on it. But after poking around a little bit, I found like some Normandy stuff and there was one guy who has like a whole bunch of stuff. It's funny because you will sometimes see like the same items sold by different sellers. So I'm pretty sure they're all like ripping each other off. But this stuff is like really nice quality. Like there's barely any like print marks on it or whatever you call them. You can like tell it's printed. Like this stuff looks really clean. It came, shipped just fine. So I got like a little house. It's in like 3 pieces. You can take it apart. And not on the picture because it's a picture. And then like a couple of ruins and a whole bunch of like fence, like stone fence posts. It's all like 20 millimeter or 172. So that will kind of be the start to doing like what I've always wanted to have is like whole like Normandy like setup with like farmhouses and townhouses and some ruins and stuff, and be able to do it. So you have like half the city or half the village is like intact and half is ruined or whatever. You can make like a smaller village has all ruins or whatever. So so yeah, I was actually really pleased with them. They were not very expensive. I'm sure like whenever you mention like 3D print stuff, somebody will like start jumping up and down and saying that as long as you don't mind spending like 200 hours a day, it's way cheaper to just buy a printer and print it yourself. But I don't got the fucking time and I don't got the fucking inclination. So paying some dude on Etsy to do it for me is like the basis of the modern economic system. So if you have a problem with that, go like argue with like your economics 101 teacher. But
yeah, exactly.
Honestly, I was just like pleased with it. And then I had a big stack, like I said, of $10 tanks, which I was really pleased with. So we threw those like, I was teaching a friend of mine to play some miniatures gaming, and we just threw every tank we had like on the table. It was pretty cool. So we had like a Panther, a Punch of 3, a Stuke, and then I forget what we had on the Allied side. It was like a Churchill, a couple of others, a Valentine, and like an armored car. So, complete chaos, but it was fun.
So, I mean, that sounds great. And that's all in 20 millimeter.
Yeah, because I had originally, because I kept kicking around whether it was going to be 15 or 172 plastic or whatever. And then I bought a couple of packs just on a whim of the AB miniatures 20mm range, and then I was like, oh my god, this is like the only thing I want to buy forever and ever now because they're so good. They are like really nice. You wouldn't think that like the difference from 15 to 20 would be like that big, but it's, you know, like they just feel a little larger. It's not even the size so much. They're just like really well done. They're very animated, and when you buy like a bag with a squad in, every single figure in the bag is in a separate pose. So if you buy like 3 different bags for your platoon, you have like 30 unique guys. It's really cool.
When I bought the 172 guys, which are basically the same, right? 20mm 172.
Yeah.
They're pretty close.
Yeah,
they're not like big 15mm. They're like tiny 28mm.
Yes.
Or detail, and I think that's their selling point, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're smaller, but the detail is so good.
Yeah, it does vary a little bit on like some of the sets you can get, because there's definitely some that are like 40 years old and they're kind of shit. But they're never like bad. Like a lot of them are still like perfectly good, and I've seen some that are like really really good. The one downside is sometimes the poses can be kind of weird, because I guess the way that they are being cast, because they're like one piece, so you'll have these very like flat sideways poses a lot.
Yep.
You just have to. But yeah,
standing shooting.
Yeah. That's like very certain, and you get like a lot of like bendy like rifle barrels and stuff, which is kind of a pain. But yeah, like for the price, it obviously like you can't argue with it.
Yeah, I imagine the metal stuff is really nice. I know those Wesda's plastics are phenomenal.
Oh yeah. These are like just really nice. I was so impressed with it. I wasn't gonna, like I said, and then I saw them. I was like, you know what? This is the only thing I want to do forever now.
Forever. I'm done with the other skills. I'm just gonna say to Lord Draconum, yes. Eventually, we will saga. And my dad is in the chat, so hello, Dad.
Oh,
good to see you,
Dad.
Seems like a good thing to be in production of some of those buildings that you need to play the game. Yep, that's right. If you're in a place like the Yukon, then you definitely would want to have a 3D printer, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Ordering off Etsy will be a bit pricey.
Oh yeah, well yeah, especially with chaos and with international shipping and stuff. So it's one of those things where like the more time goes on and the better like 3D printing gets, the more and more like appealing it gets. But there's still that, like every single person I know who's like started 3D printing, it is basically like a second hobby you get that sometimes interfaces with your first hobby. So
they say though that bamboo now is basically like the Apple of 3D printing.
Yeah, I've heard like it's basically for idiots now, which is the level that I would need.
Yeah, you upload everything to the cloud, it does all the work, and you're done.
Yeah,
which is pretty great.
Oh, absolutely. And
but I don't know.
When we get to our main topic, to Kickstarter, because I was looking earlier, there is like I'm being very conservative in my estimate here, but there's probably 10 trillion terrain sets for 3D printing on Kickstarter. And
I think it's a good segue, honestly. 3D printers.
Yeah, that's pretty.
And Kickstarter. I mean, you used to be able to kickstart 3D printers, but now every Chinese factory can make them, so there's no problem.
Oh yeah, they just churn that stuff out. So yeah, we were going to talk about Kickstarter. Kickstarter has been, it's funny. It's one of those things that, like, if you try to think of like when was it that Kickstarter didn't exist, and it feels like that was never, because it's just like so prevalent now, especially in like any hobby space. And it has done there's a lot of stuff we've gotten that probably wouldn't have happened without Kickstarter. But there's also, I think, some downsides or some less savory. I don't know. It's not really like, criminal or anything. But there's definitely some like side effects and consequences, I think, of Kickstarter. And I think that kind of the case both across, because it's like very common, like role-playing games, a lot of stuff literally only gets releases on Kickstarter. Board games use it a lot. Obviously, they're often like they're the ones making like the huge sums of money. But there's a lot for miniatures as well. I was kind of poking around earlier. It was funny because I was gonna go look for like, what big games do I remember that was like Kickstarted originally, and then I went and clicked on found like 8 different ones on Kickstarter, and I realized I had never heard of any of them. Some of them got funded and some of them didn't, but they all got or some of them got released, and some of them got like tons and tons of money, but they never released anything. Which is a great excuse me. This is a great business option if you can get it. Just get like $100,000 and then don't release a product. Really, that seems to be. You still got to pay taxes on it, I'm sure, but it's all profit from there because you didn't have any product to release. But I guess let's start with like a personal, the personal connection. Like, how much hobby stuff have you like bought on Kickstarter?
I think the very first hobby Kickstarter I ever backed was the Robotech RPG Tactics.
Oh my god, that's a good start.
And that was painful, yeah. But they weren't all painful.
Did you get?
I heard like Reaper Bones. I heard, if you jump in on a Reaper Bones Kickstarter, you'll have enough miniatures to last you till you're dead. So I did that, and that was successful. And I got exactly what I ordered, and things were perfect.
You still have miniatures from that?
Yeah, I ordered one of the Zombicide Kickstarters because that was another legendary one. Like you buy one of those, you have more minis than you ever want, and that was true. The box I got from that was gigantic. It was amazing. A little pop-up terrain book I kickstarted, and that was successful. I got that book, and I never used it, but it's really cool.
The potential was really cool.
Yeah, and that company did succeed too. Like that's one of the ones where they managed to kickstart something and become a company, as opposed to like being kickstart something and become a Kickstarter company, where that's all they ever do. Like CMON now, basically. That's all they do is kickstart things.
Yeah, good grief. I was complaining about this on Blue Sky a couple of days ago, that because Kickstarter is so common, especially for role-playing games, but it's a thing for miniatures as well. A lot of these games only get sold on Kickstarter, and then maybe like for direct sale on like the company's website or something. But they're basically like invisible at retail. And it makes it like people always complain about how like Dungeons and Dragons and Warhammer 40K are like the only games that anyone like plays or even knows about. And part of that is that that's the only thing that's like at the retail stores because it's all being kickstarted. So unless they are, I mean, some companies use it to like build into, so they can produce the thing and then it can go to retail. Or you get like large companies who use Kickstarter even though they just have like a regular production line anyway. Which is a whole like separate thing. There's this idea, I feel, and I don't know if this is like gone away or not, but at least it used to be this idea that Kickstarter was meant to be like for the little guy. So you could like get the funding to make something that you couldn't do normally. Because if you're the little guy, you can't really get like investment or stuff. You can't get like a bunch of people to like pre-order your thing because they don't know who you are. But now like just looking around, like some of them are obviously like smaller companies anyway. But then some of it is like not smaller companies. Like some of it is just like regular companies that like you can find in retail stores and they're kickstarting anyway. So do you have like a thought on that, or is that does that not bother you, or is that
well? That'll bring it to another Kickstarter, which I've backed and I've been enjoying, and I would continue to back, even though they shouldn't be on Kickstarter. Really, it's Catalyst Games. Catalyst Games, they never should have been on Kickstarter. I don't think. They have enough success, but it's like CMON, where they just build off of that hype. They promise you so many things. They deliver so many things. I mean, this last one for Catalyst Games has been a little sketchy for delivery, but, people are getting their stuff. It's not like Palladium, where they just bombed in a fiery death.
Like, they were selling some of the box sets like at conventions while backers had not gotten them. That was like,
which is very common. Yeah, like I think that's now standard operating procedure.
I have definitely seen that a lot, but people never like it. Yeah, I'm looking at the Kickstarter page here. Like, I don't know how big Dreampot 9 is anymore, but like they are used to be at retail level, and they're still like, they have their website. You can buy stuff from them, but they've done like Kickstarters and stuff.
Those companies are kind of like a gray area. I think Catalyst Games was in that factor too. Like they're big enough to be known, but not necessarily, they don't have as much momentum or capital to work with. Like they can't just go to a Chinese factory and hire off the production rates, at least at the beginning. But now Catalyst Games, they should have no problem at this point. But it's also say hi to Charles Latora. Hey, how's it going? Good to see you. I'm going to say, at least in the RPG space, it's where that's the bulk of the spending of RPG outside the really big players. So it becomes a vicious cycle built on FOMO. Yeah, that's from Scald.
Well, Lord Dracoma agrees about Catalyst. The FOMO is kind of like a big part of like the marketing as well, but it kind of ties into one of the things that I kind of wanted to, I guess, raise as like the provocative question of, because I look at a lot of these games. Like I said, I think I found like 8 different games. I didn't save the link to them because I didn't want to like call anyone out. This is not like Ivan's Ivan being shit to
the Hall of Shame.
Yeah. So plus it doesn't look good if you're like selling shit and then you're bagging on like the other dudes, right?
Well, only when you announce your Kickstarter at the very end of the show.
Yes. We will not fuck it up. We'll make it even worse.
That's right. Yeah.
But like I found a bunch of games that I had literally never heard of. Like not just not seen like in stores or something, but like I have literally never heard of anyone playing. And I poked around a little bit, and that may in fact have been true. Some of them were sci-fi games, because if it's a fantasy game, there's a pretty real chance that I probably just wouldn't have heard of it. I don't really play fantasy that much. But like fantasy or sci-fi like skirmish games and stuff, that just absolutely no idea. I've never seen anyone post that they're playing it or that they're paying for it. I've never seen anyone like paint the minis and post them on social media or anything. Which raised the question, because some of these were like successfully funded and provided stuff. Like the games went out to somebody and then like nobody played them. And I wonder sometimes, because sometimes I've seen with like board games where people will kickstart something and then it takes like a year for it to come out, because it just takes a while. Or it gets delayed because there's like a production issue. That's not like anyone's fault necessarily. And I think people like understand that's part of the risk, right? Because you're paying at a very early stage and it could be forever before the game is done. But then like, did the hype like go out of it? Like people get hyped up about getting like a bunch of cool like Space Demons or something, Space Demon minis. And then when they had to get the game like a year later, you've already like moved on. You're just not into Space Demons anymore. So I don't know if that's like a thing, or if these like are these Kickstarter games just like not building a community. Because the ones I see that like get successful seem to be either it's already a game, like Catalyst don't need Kickstarter to make BattleTech like popular. You can find BattleTech players, right? Or it's something where it's like Forbidden Psalm or something, where like there was a community that was sort of like created, always ready to like be into it. I don't remember if what was the couple of games by the YouTube guy, the Demon one. I don't remember if he kickstarted that or not.
Malev? Was it Malev?
No. What was the other one? It was like a warband game. We had like demons and stuff in hell.
Oh, was it Snarling Badger Studios?
Yeah,
Uncle Adam and Vince Ventrella.
Oh yeah.
No, they don't kickstart because they only make PDFs, so they're like, we don't need to kickstart anything. He does have like a spiel. If anyone ever asks him, why didn't you kickstart this? Is like, because we don't need to. There's no need. This is just a PDF. You order it off of Wargame Vault.
No, that's true. But if they did, yes, Rain in Hell. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh,
now people are just throwing out names. Like, how many demon games are there?
So many.
Yeah, that's like a thing. Maybe I need to get in on the Satan gaming. That's the next big thing. But like some of those are where there's already an audience built into it, so they're just happy to get it. Like you could, if they did Rain in Hell and they wanted like really expensive glossy artwork, and they wanted to kickstart to cover that, I think people would have been into that and paid for it, and it would have had an audience because like it's his audience, right? Like they were ready to for anything that he would be like interested in. But when it's like a whole new rule set with a bunch of stuff, like it's already difficult to get a game going. Like me and Miniatorium in the chat there have been talking a couple of times about how like rare it is for like a new sci-fi skirmish game to like go anywhere. Like none of them go anywhere. Like what is the, not counting like Legion, Star Wars Legion, or anything Games Workshop, name like one other sci-fi skirmish game that like has a sizable audience.
Like with miniatures attached or miniatures?
Yeah, like with like miniatures, I guess OPR, but that's basically just more Warhammer.
Yeah, OPR would be the one for generic sci-fi, and Stargrave, the biggest competitor, 5 parsecs from home.
Well, yeah. Now although they're working on more miniatures, so
yeah, they do have the miniatures line, but it's not.
But it gets pretty slim after that. There's not.
Yeah, exactly.
And for like actual like army games, there's just like nothing. Like Stargrave is Dead Zone. Miniatorium is saying Dead Zone. He knows that there's nobody who plays fucking Dead Zone any longer.
I think Mantic is forbidden from selling in my local area.
Oh, okay.
Like it's so hard to get any kind of Mantic.
Oh yeah, I used to live in when I lived in Grand Rapids. I talked to like 3 different retail stores that refused to stock Warlord games. You just couldn't buy Bolt Action over there. Yeah, I don't know why. I guess they were just like difficult to work with or something. But it was just like in multiple stores. But I do wonder. So somebody said in the comments that they buy some of the games just to get the miniatures, and I was wondering about that. I'd written that down, like, because a lot of these boxes come with like a shit ton of minis, and often like they're often, you know, like 100% of them are 28 millimeter. And a lot of them are like really nicely done because you need like impressive stuff to sell your Kickstarter, right? Like there was one of the games I was looking for. This one failed. I guess they had 2 Kickstarters that failed. There's like a fantasy skirmish game, but the Kickstarter page was like the first picture you see is like a bunch of like angel people with like huge tits, and then there's a bunch of dragons and stuff. So they were very, very like upfront with the miniatures, but then like even if that had shipped and people hadn't gotten ripped off, you know, would people just have used those minis to like fill up their D&D collections or even just like to paint them, like which again is, so there's a thing I have a hard time with, and maybe this is because I am mostly a rules guy and not so much miniatures guy, which is the idea that we are making games that are at some point almost like not intended to be played, which I think is just both like really bad for game design, but it's also kind of like a pity. You know, it's like when those board games Games Workshop did that, everyone just like scalped for the miniatures. Like Betrayal at Calth was one of them, and it was like a really cool game, but nobody played it. Everyone just got the box because it came with a whole bunch of Horus Heresy Marines, which are now sold separately for like bananas like prices.
Oh yeah,
like 2 of the characters from that box sell for like $50 US.
That's Games Workshop prices. That's not real prices.
yeah. It sounds like 2 fucking plastic dudes. Like I get that character.
Yeah, I got one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, they're fine. Like, you know, I have those models because I got the box set, but like it was just such a pity because like the game was actually like pretty cool, but like absolutely literally nobody played it. And I think this is a pity. A lot of this like Kickstarter stuff feels like it's kind of being put out to like get the hype cycle and get people excited about the models and minis, and then like it just doesn't go anywhere. And some of it feels like there was one game, I can never remember the name, but it's probably better I don't. It was like a cyberpunk game where they had like some really cool models, but then the model range was like super, super limited. There was just like a handful of models, and they're all like really specific characters, but it looked like it was supposed to be this like warband game where you're supposed to like make your own characters. So you can kind of see where the problem is. And it's just like, yeah, like that's never going to go anywhere because everyone has the same like 8 guys, you know, or the models are like so specific that it's hard to like adopt models from like another game. So yeah, it just becomes like turned out there too. I guess like a guy said in the chat, like it's kind of FOMO like hunting. I don't remember somebody saying Cyberpunk ? I don't remember what the name of the game was. I also don't know if it like went anywhere. It was one of those that kept like being advertised on social media and then it just disappeared.
So many.
Yeah, but it was not like name brand Cyberpunk like 2020 2020 or anything like that. It was just, you know, the concept of Cyberpunk.
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. But the funny thing was when I was poking around and trying to find a Kickstarter game that like got funded and also that I had like ever heard of, it ended up being like games by like big publishers. Like there was one by Modiphius, you know, there was a couple like that where it's like, and maybe that's, I mean, there's a bunch of like Dreampot 9, Kickstarter, a bunch of stuff. I think there was a new starter set for like Heavy Gear or something. But yeah, I don't know. It just feels like there's like this, maybe it's just like conspicuous consumption where like gamers love to get hyped up about stuff, right? We want cool stuff, and it's pretty easy to convince gamers to buy like cool new miniatures. You know, and if you get something out of the miniatures, then maybe it's not a waste anyway. But I just feel like at some point, like a lot of this stuff just ends up like being plastic that sits on the shelf or something, and like you could have gotten something else you would have more fun with. But maybe that's like a really like a negative way of looking at it. Like,
yeah. Well, some Kickstarter stuff was never intended for retail. Sometimes they do that specifically. Even a bigger company like whoever does Infinity, Corvus Belli, that's it.
Yeah.
They've made specific games that will only ever be Kickstarted, and you will never be able to buy a game outside of Kickstarter. And it's really weird to me. Like, you're a company that sells games. Why would you do that to yourself?
Yeah, board games get that a lot too. This is the thing that really bothers me. It's funny because I don't really buy expansions for board games very often, but the idea that there is an expansion that I can never have will make me like not want to get the game to begin with. Because I like the idea that I could, if I really get into this game, I could be like completionist and I can get all the stuff for it. So if there's like Kickstarter exclusive like expansions or game stuff, that just like really discourages me. Maybe that's like a weird thing.
Yeah. On the flip side, though, like Lord Draconum bought into when Age of Magic was coming out for Saga. He bought into this warband that had like exclusive zombies and a necromancer. And I think the premise was that they would only ever be kickstarted, like available on the Kickstarter, and you'd never be able to buy them again. And then they changed their mind. So he bought in thinking that, this is the only way to ever get them, and then they just release them later anyway.
I think if it's like exclusive miniatures, I don't think that like bothers me a lot. Like I know when the new Hero Quest board game was done, I think like there's a second set of the character models that was in the original. It wasn't Kickstarter, but it was like their version of it. Yeah. That doesn't bother me a lot. Like that's in that case, it's like if you're putting your money up front to help us make this thing, you get like this extra little thing.
That's a company, Hasbro. They really need to Kickstarter stuff, don't they?
Yeah, they have like their own. I forget what it's called, but they have their own. Like, yeah, it's like okay, you guys are like literally the 10,000 ton fucking gorilla. Like you don't need this shit.
Yeah, but like it kind of makes sense in a way. Because like we don't know if people actually want this or not, so let's just put it on Pulse, and if people want it, they'll buy it up, and then we'll make it.
Yeah.
We're not even going to bother researching this. We'll just say we could do it. Or not. We don't care.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when I forget what board game company, it's GMT that has the like P500 club. Is like if 500 of you assholes put in a pre-order, we will make the game. Which so it's like a way of gauging like what interest there is. And I get it. If you have to like print a bunch of stuff and you have to get the miniatures done, you have to, like it's a lot, and it all has to come together. So there's a separate angle to this because one thing I've noticed, obviously, like when Kickstarter like started out way back, it was supposed to be to have things created, and like, and for a while, maybe this is still the case too, in the less like materialist corner. Like some of the stuff that's on Kickstarter is like literally like I'm doing an interpretive dance and I'm gonna put it on YouTube or something. So Kickstart that. But I think for a lot of stuff, especially for like nerd stuff, a lot of it is like it's basically just like a shopping list, where it's like you're buying a product. It's so funny because every time you support something on Kickstarter, it has the same little thing saying like, I forget the wording was like, there's no guarantee you get shit.
Yeah.
Because that's the nature of it. But like that is 1,000% not how people go about Kickstarter. Like everyone views it as like a shopping cart.
Well, especially if you present it as a shopping cart, it's like, well, if you buy this and this and this that are extra, this is what you get. You were getting these things because you're buying it. Except for maybe you don't,
Right. Like you're paying for the you're like going to a restaurant where it's uncertain whether you get like because the chef is just like in a pissy mood, so he may or may not like give you eggs. Now, what do you think of companies that take material they have already built and basically sell it on Kickstarter? Like it's ready to go. It's basically like just, like it's literally a storefront. They're not funding it or anything.
Because of how I work now in a warehouse with logistics and we buy things from China, we import a lot of stuff. I could see the validity of saying I can make this, but I don't have anywhere to put it. And I don't have any way to distribute it. And that's why I need the Kickstarter. So, but I think that maybe people wouldn't necessarily be as amiable to that. If you said that's why we need the Kickstarter because we can make it, we just can't ship it out. Sort of thing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like there's something about it that it just like grinds my gears, but I'm also open to the fact that I'm just like old and grumpy, and maybe it's like fine, and I should just like stop bitching about it. because there's a lot of stuff I've looked at where it's like, one of them that I saw recently was literally just for STLs. Like the guy had already made all of them because it advertised in the Kickstarter, like you will literally have the files like as soon as you like pledge to it or whatever. So it's like, okay, you like at this point you're just like asking Kickstarter to like take a cut, like you're just using it for publicity, I guess, like because more people will see it on Kickstarter. Or maybe that audience is just like expecting you to be on Kickstarter and you're just following it. But like it feels like in some of those cases you could literally just save money and like sell it from your website.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's got to be a reason why they do it because it's so common.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
And it has to be 100% just the publicity, but it is. Yeah,
I
it's so
imagine,
weird.
like yeah, if you can get like shown on Kickstarter, maybe like I'm sure there's like a value to because they have like a recommendation thing. So if I search, like naked goblin miniatures or whatever, I'm looking for that particular day, maybe my thing comes up, and
Yeah, exactly. So there is that. But like STL sites are so prevalent now, you don't. I don't think you really necessarily need to use Kickstarter to take your money.
Yeah. So yeah, TechnoSkull says it's because that's where the buyers are. I guess it also depends. The ones I see coming up on Kickstarter a lot are the ones that are like lots of stuff.
Crafty Torben knows what's going on.
Of course he does.
Yeah.
Torben. Oh yeah. So hobby news sites that won't talk about stuff unless it's Kickstarted, which is again like feeding the like FOMO thing, because it becomes this like the news sites want stuff to churn through. So a Kickstarter is good for getting people like excited because they'll see a Kickstarter for like Space Marine ripoffs and they'll go click on the site and then they'll go to the Kickstarter and it'll like you keep the machine like grinding along.
It could be a fun experiment though. I mean, you could just take a rule set that you're not too passionate about and say, I'll make it if you guys Kickstart it.
Yeah. There was a guy many years ago, Greg Stoltze, he's an RPG writer, but he came up with what he called the ransom model, which was he would write like a game or a expansion or something, and he would hold it for ransom. So like until I get whatever $500, you can't have this. And then once he got that money, he would just make it available for everybody to download. So it was like if you wanted this to be available, you could throw in some money, and then once the ransom was hit, he would just put it out there, and everyone gets it. And it was just up to people what they would like put into it. Like in theory, like one person could just like run their credit card and get it for everybody, or 500 people could put it all or whatever. But I always thought that was kind of cool because definitely. And at the time, like I mean, he could make more money selling it conventionally, but his whole thing was he had written it and he just wanted it to be out there for a certain value, and then he didn't want to worry about it. He didn't want to worry about like if it got pirated or anything afterwards. Just like whatever, go have it. So I always thought that was cool.
In a previous episode, you talked about like games you'd recommend that no one's ever heard of. And then the guy came back to you and said, well, maybe are you interested in picking up this project? This could be like the kind of thing you might want to kickstart, because you could say, if you guys want to see this back out in the world in a nice glossy format, I'm going to need this much money. So
that is
you kickstart it or
not.
Especially if it's not a living rule book like you usually do. If it's like a one and done, then and that
which it will be. And art cost is one thing where you see this a lot with RPG people, because like any nerd with a computer and time on their hands can grind out like 30,000 words. But getting like a full color rulebook, that is like people underestimate, unless you're done publishing, how expensive like color artwork is. Even if you get like somebody cheap from like Estonia or something to do it.
Yeah, layout guy and proofreaders.
Yeah.
Test copies.
Well, I can tell you from reading a lot of RPG books that none of that shit has ever seen a proofreader.
That's what Kickstarter is for.
Exactly.
Kickstarter the next one. Well, if you guys want it better, then we're gonna have to Kickstart it all over again. This time we'll get a proofreader. That'll be second edition.
That is how it works, right? But Kickstarting to cover like art costs and stuff, there's also a weird thing with it where it's sometimes like unclear. Because some people will kickstart stuff, especially if it's like just a book that's a game, where it is essentially just covering the production cost, and they are really looking to make like no money off the whole thing, which is like an interesting choice. It's kind of it makes it a little weird. Like I'm in a position where everything I make, unless it's literally just a passion project, it has to be able to turn some sort of profit, because otherwise I can't pay my mortgage. But I think it can sometimes I'm trying to word this so it doesn't sound like I'm being a bitch about it, but I think it can sometimes like skew the perception of what things cost, or what things cost to make. Because if you're writing a game that took, I don't know, 100 hours to make, that's still 100 hours of work. Now you may have done that just because you enjoyed doing it. You don't have to get paid for it. Like, not everything has to be commercial, but I think it's important for people to kind of understand the connection between like the time and the money and so on. Or if you make your own art, like you're one of those people who just can draw really well and you can illustrate your whole game, that's really awesome. But if somebody else had to pay someone to illustrate the same game, they would be out $5,000. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like kind of
true.
And I think sometimes Kickstarter can kind of like distort some of those things where people don't really understand. Like, ironically, even though it should give you more insight into like the process.
Well, let's say with Catalyst Games, they have to pay for a lot of things. They pay for the art. They have to pay for, the factories to make the miniatures. That's what part of the Kickstarter is for. And then the distributor. If they didn't kickstart and they had it at a slower pace, they probably could handle it in-house. But because they're kickstarting and they're getting like that blast of inventory that needs to go out across the world, Kickstarter really is the only option because they made it the only option.
No, this is true.
They release way too many things all at once. And so Kickstarter is really the only way to do it.
Well, that's also part of like Kickstarter it does allow you to like scale things up because it gives you the money all at once. So you get a situation where you can release something that wouldn't be possible. Like a lot of these games, hey, Lancelot says meow. You see a lot of games that get like box sets and stuff from like games nobody has heard of and will ever hear of, but they get like a box set with like a full color rulebook and miniatures and some terrain and special dice and all this stuff, and for like not crazy prices. So obviously, like a lot of stuff like that would just not happen at all without Kickstarter. So there's definitely like an enabling sounds bad, but there's like an enabling factor where like some things, they just aren't possible without doing it this way, and you just have to kind of weigh the ups and downs.
Imagine, if you will, Ivan, you've decided to kickstart your entire library. Like every single book's going to get a glossy, full cover, hardcover art edition, but I'm going to kickstart it all at once. Then you have to manage all the artists all at once and all the publishers all at once.
Oh my god, this is exactly like why. Then you offer free shipping to like Japan and New Zealand, because that will not backfire later and like ruin your company. But that's actually a good segue into the next thing I had in mind, which is Kickstarters that kind of get fucked up, because a lot of them do. I don't know what I'm sure there's stats out there for like what is the like failure rate of Kickstarters, and
Torben.
He 100% has. He's like, actually, it's 17.2%. Like, it's very possible that like the majority of them actually either deliver or they deliver like close enough. Because sometimes, you have to, whatever, something happens, they can't do the miniatures in like the right material. You have to do them in a different material, and it's okay. It's not what was promised, but like, it's fine. Or sometimes you get the product and it's actually just hot garbage. The miniatures are good, but the game is like unplayable. But a lot of them, like I feel like if they like flame out, they usually just don't deliver anything at all. Like at some point, like the dude like goes quiet, runs away with the money, or they run into like production issues or something. And it's kind of
Torben knows.
See, now I don't know if you made that number or not. Yeah, but 18% sounds pretty. If I had to guess, I would say, I would have said 18.4 though, but I'm a little more pessimistic.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, it's fine. My brain was like trying to jump out of my skull anyway, because it was tired of listening to me. The more, I think I've talked about this a little bit before, but like the more people you have, like you have here's your game idea. You want to make a game about like rabbits in space and they fight each other with swords. And you tell some people about it and they think like, oh my God, that is the coolest shit I've ever heard. I want to play a sword wielding space rabbit. And you're like, you play it with your friends a little bit. You make like a little prototype and you just, paint bunny ears on some space marines. and eventually you decide you're gonna make this a game. This could be really cool. This could be like the next big thing. Like everyone wants space bunny swords. That's like, why have we not had this before? And you go to get a Kickstarter, and you need like a rule book, which you can write, but you need art. So you line up like 3 different artists. They can do one guy for the cover, one guy for the interior, and you need a third guy to do like the stuff that goes in the corner of the pages and stuff like that. And you need a layout guy to lay out the whole thing. You need a proofreader, ideally. You don't, but then you need like a reference sheet, and that's like glossy cardboard. So you got to get that printed at some print shop, which may not be the same shop that does your book. And you need your figure range, which means you need a sculptor, and you need to produce them, and and it all needs to go in a box, and that box is done by a different company, and all of this shit has to be assembled. And suddenly your like stupid little game has like 20 different people all connected into it. And if any one of those 20 people, like suddenly tomorrow his cat has to go to college and he can't work anymore, then suddenly you're fucked, because now you have to like replace the artwork, or you have to replace some other thing, or you were delayed because your order was really small at the Chinese factory, so they pushed you back because like Apple came through, needed 10 trillion boxes for their project, so your order for 200 boxes just got pushed to the 37th next Chinese New Year.
Mm-hmm.
So like the more stuff you kind of line up and pile on top of each other and pile like the more like ways there are for your project to either get delayed, get changed, get fucked up. Like I guess it's like, it's the opposite of having a single point of failure. It's like having infinite points of failure. Mm-hmm. And that's assuming that everything just like, sometimes it comes back and you get the book back, but it's like something with the colors is just like kind of wrong and doesn't look that nice. So you have to make the decision of like, do you delay the entire thing and maybe burn through, a bunch of your money? Apologies to people who are watching camera and getting like Lancelot's ear, but he's leaning in front of the camera.
Yeah.
So it looks like a black fog that's like enveloping the room. Do you end up delaying the book for like 3 more months to get that fixed? Can you afford to do that? Like, did you burn through all the money already, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're paying people to do stuff, like, you're paying people to do stuff. So there's like, and I think that's where a lot of, when you see Kickstarters run into problems, because a lot of these people are, not business guys. Like, I'm barely a business guy. Mm-hmm. And it's a skill set to like be able to plan all that stuff and work around it and have contingency plans. So until you've done it, you just have no idea, right?
Yeah, and math adds up. Then that's why the big companies are really good on Kickstarter, because they already know what to do.
Mm-hmm. Plus, they have some backup capital that you probably don't if you're just one guy, mm-hmm. or, a couple of guys. So, I think I guess that's like there's always like looking into what kind of company is it? Do they have any experience in launching this kind of product? Do they have prior industry experience? Do they have It's like when you look at any Kickstarter page, and you're supposed to put like, what are the risks with the project? And they always mm-hmm. put some stupid bullshit like, oh, well, there are risks for all projects, but we think we're pretty awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the other dudes thought they were pretty awesome too. I'm trying to like focus here because Lancelot is sitting on the other side of the phone that I'm using and like staring at me and like following my hand when I'm gesturing.
Well, like, I'll take this interlude to say that Technoscald says this right here is how Ivan tests his new concepts. In 2026, we're going to get 5 hops from your burrow.
See, that is a pretty catchy title, and it will not be coming to Kickstarter. We're going to Indiegogo.
You could 100% Kickstarter it, of course.
Absolutely.
Space bunnies with swords.
They would sell. Actually, they probably would sell.
Yeah. Sometimes you just have to decide if you're marketing to the thirsty crowd or the furry crowd.
Oh, they're horny bunnies. I think that's the same crowd as far as I've seen. That's a Venn diagram that doesn't have any exceptions on it.
One big circle.
Yeah, with a thick line. But yeah, excuse me. I feel like that's kind of and I wonder if I don't know if there's like Kickstarter fatigue yet for miniatures games. I've seen it with board games where people say that like they're kind of sick of stuff being Kickstarted. They just want to be able to buy the game right away. I know miniatures gamers have gotten there because miniatures gamers are also used to buying stuff that is just either in case or because you want it for something else. Like if you buy a box set and you get some cool terrain, it doesn't really matter if the game is shit because you get some cool terrain out of it. You know, so maybe there's what's the word? Like a modifying factor where it's not as big as long as you get your stuff. It's not as big a deal if it's like a really good game or
whatever. Yeah, like Lord Draconum never got his Jurassic Park Kickstarter game.
Was that a thing?
Yeah.
What? See,
yeah,
I don't know shit. Maybe I'm just like out of touch.
Like, how does the Jurassic Park game fail? It's kind of spectacular if you think about it. Like, how could they have kickstarted Jurassic Park and it failed? But somehow this company, I don't know the story of that one, but I know the story of Robotech. I know why they failed.
That one, yeah. I mean, maybe it's one of those things where like each failure is like unique in its own way.
Yeah.
There was another I was looking for. This one I think did come out, but nobody played it. But it was done by it was called Maelstrom's Edge from the team behind dakadaka.com.
Yeah.
And it looks like the miniatures look cool, and they, as far as I can tell, like delivered all the stuff. But that's another game where like I don't know if the game is good or bad. I'm not making an opinion on anything. I've just literally never heard anyone say that they played this game.
Yeah. Well, the title is the Kickstarter Trap, and that's a good example, I think, of the Kickstarter Trap, where they send out so much hype. Like everywhere you went, you saw Maelstrom's Edge. Like, I don't care about this game, and I see it everywhere. But some people did care about the game. They kickstarted it. And then the whole cycle takes so long to get through that you lost all the hype. People have moved on to other things. They finally get the miniatures. They put them on the shelf. And that's it. It went off to die.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it where...
you got to save your hype budget for when people actually getting delivered. That's when you run your campaigns.
Right. Because part of it is, if this is a game that you're not getting at your local store, this means that if you're like starting this game, unless you're just soloing it, you're gonna have to like go out and like get people into playing it. But the hype cycle online has already like died out like half a year ago. So maybe that's like part of the answer why these games kind of. Oh, cat! Would you stop? He's chasing my mouse pointer. You are such a shit. Because you have to like everyone online, because it's difficult to get an online hype cycle to last more than like a couple of months. And there's no guarantee that all of those dudes are like anywhere near where you live. So you're going to have to basically like generate all of that on your own with a game that where it's uncertain whether you can even get the stuff anymore. So I think a lot of these games also kind of have a built-in like failure point just in terms of like getting, again, like it doesn't matter if you like Catalyst because like people will never stop playing BattleTech, you know, so they can. But yeah,
they grew up playing BattleTech. They'll die playing BattleTech.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has played a little BattleTech.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'll just interrupt for 1 sec. Lord Draconum was saying, so for Jurassic Park, the company mismanaged everything and to make trips to the US. So I think they kind of fell into the Palladium trap too, where they took the money that made them successful in the Kickstarter and used it to try to do other things instead of the actual Kickstarter part.
That is very possible.
Because sometimes when you get a lot of money in your hands, it's hard to act responsible.
Well, and also like there's been a couple of cases where you get like your Kickstarter funds, but then you blow all the money to do stuff, and then you realize that you now owe like 40 grand in taxes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it turns out that that was taxable income.
Yeah, and then Torben's talking about his Star Eagles. He really wants to talk about the Star Eagles, so we gotta let him talk about the Star Eagles.
Yeah.
This is his last big Kickstarter. It did come out, and he did get his stuff, but only just kept his promise. Only just. The touted box, for instance, was basically a flimsy box for donuts, which is delicious, with a sticker on it. But it was indeed a box. The touted box. I don't know what the touted box. I don't know anything about Star Eagles. I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one. But yeah, I mean, shitty packaging, because then you get to the point where it's like, okay, we can deliver this, but we're going to have to start making some cuts. So instead of like a big cool box, you're just going to get like a donut box. Maybe it's like an actual donut box. Like it still has like powdered sugar in it. Or the rule book becomes soft cover instead of hardcover or whatever. And some of those things can happen because the costs go up, or you just misjudged it to begin with, right?
Like Palladium, the first thing that they said was the error they made is they had all the STLs done before anyone had a 3D printer sort of thing for the models. They had them created so that they sent to them to the Chinese factory, and the Chinese factory said, "Oh, we use a different software, so these all have to be converted."
Oh.
So apparently the files they made needed to be reconverted into the CAD program that the factory used. And that's a pretty big rookie mistake for manufacturing.
But it also is one of the cases where it's hard to tell. Could that have been avoided somehow, or should they have gone with a different manufacturer, or I have no idea. I don't know anything about anything.
Or is it just a ruse?
Yeah, they're just being idiots.
They actually just did something else with the money and blamed it on CADs.
I mean, you never know. Star Eagles was a Song of Blades and Heroes license for Starfighters. Okay.
And he said that it was a Kickstarter trap for the guy who made it. Yeah, I know.
You get, I've seen this for a couple of role-playing games where it's the guy will pop up once every 2 years or something and say he's still working on the book. And obviously, no, you're not.
Yeah.
At some point, it's like anything. If you're you decide you're gonna start exercising, you buy some hand weights or something, or and you set them up and you exercise real hard on day 1 and on day 2, and then you kind of just want to eat donuts and watch Gladiator on day 3, and you keep looking at these weights, and now it's day 15, and you keep telling yourself, you just feel worse and worse about it, and finally it's day 89, and you're still telling yourself that I'm definitely gonna lift weights, but you're not.
No.
And the longer you sit and stare at these fucking weights, the worse it gets. Anyone who has any kind of anxiety about a deadline or something knows how that feels. At some point, it's so past that it almost becomes painful to try and go do it.
Yeah.
And if it's been literally years, you just need to give up. I mean, you just fuck off with the money, it's not any of these people know where you live. Just go to. Fine. If you got not a lot of money, just go blow it on pizzas. If you got a lot of money, find some place that doesn't have an extradition treaty. Just go there with your 200 grand, buy a house.
The guy who's involved with the Palladium Robotech game, he did try to kickstart another game.
Did that go?
So he was the author of the game.
Oh, okay.
And people gave him death threats. They hunted him down. And they trashed the Kickstarter he tried to start up. All because he was involved with the one failure, which may or may not have been, within his control. Probably not. He probably
it sounds like that dude. Probably not, but that's the risk for it.
Yeah, that's a nightmare. So
no, exactly.
Sometimes they will hunt you down at your home.
Yeah, well, and it's also
because Robotech fans are crazy.
Yeah, no shit. But you are trading on reputation, right? You're putting your name out there and saying, because that's kind of the only thing you got. When Catalyst puts out a Kickstarter, everyone is pretty sure they're going to get their stuff because it's a big business. They've done it before. They have a track record. Maybe it's delayed. Maybe they have to change something. Stuff happens, but you will get your stuff. When it's Honest Jim's board game company, and this is your first Kickstarter, and you're promising a bunch of shit, free shipping to Japan for a game box that weighs 40 pounds. Maybe that's not quite so certain that you're going to get your stuff. Or, sometimes it's Palladium Games and you're definitely not getting your stuff, even though you should.
Yeah.
But, you do kind of torpedo your reputation on it because that's kind of the only thing you have to trade on, especially if you're an indie dude. That's part of why I have not touched Kickstarter for anything, because I'm super risk averse with stuff, especially stuff that involves other people, so that it could be fucked up even if I don't fuck it up, but somebody else, this is like I said before, the more people you have involved, it only takes one of those to you have a delay or it's all broken. And then you have to look at this and try to like find your way back, or you have to like write a stupid apology, and at some point, like you're always there's still people who are mad about Palladium, and it's been like what 10 years now.
It hasn't been long enough, that's for sure.
First year. But that's what I mean. Like you can't like ever undo that. You can undo it for some people, but it's just such a big risk.
The Trench Crusade Kickstarter was very successful.
Yeah.
Like phenomenally successful for stuff. Like they already had the STLs done. They basically had the book ready to go. It's kind of, it'll be interesting to watch how they handle everything.
So I have seen that like start popping up more and more. And I was kind of watching for a while if this was going to be one of those games that people paint and like make lore for, but they don't actually play. But I have actually started seeing like the odd like battle report popping up. So, but I think, like you said, they had already kind of done most of the work. I don't know if they've done all of the work, but like quite a lot had been done. And they had kind of very like, full package that they were delivering. Like, here's all of this stuff, what it's going to look like. So you kind of got the impression that like there's some stuff behind this, and they had more information about what the game actually was, what the models was, like all of this stuff. But I also think they were kind of, like they nailed right into this like grimdark like bullshit thing that is like everything now in miniatures gaming. So it was like the perfect thing to put out there.
Yeah, and they're all professionals too, so that helps. They're not
like
Tom the board game guy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like Sumas Pirinen and whatever the other dude is, like
the artist.
Yeah, like so there was less like there were people who had obviously shown before that they could do it. And so people weren't really worried about it. But they also like managed to get community. That's perhaps the reason it did succeed, is because they managed to get like community like vibe going almost immediately. Like as soon as people saw that stuff, they were like speculating on it and like wanted to create things and be involved in it in a way that like some of these games that I was looking at just didn't do or didn't get. Here's another that I don't think ever delivered, called Fallen Frontiers. This one's from like 2016. Yeah, again, like just kind of a generic like sci-fi minis game, board game minis game thing. Came in a box, had a bunch of concept art, very sort of Mass Effect-y looking, and there are like 4,000 comments on the Kickstarter page, which is always a good sign. And it just didn't go anywhere. Let's see. Minitorium says, not getting it into stores is a bit of a death knell. If you can't buy it at the store, why would a store owner allow you to play at the store? That's an excellent question. Because then you're kind of, I mean, I guess we buy soda and like chips or something.
It's true.
But
a board game cafe, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, some stores kind of don't care as long as because like people playing a game like will get people's interest in playing games. But obviously there's like a little bit of bad form rolling in to play a game that they don't sell, you know, unless it's a place where you can pay for like board space, table space. I think if it's being provided for free, you kind of have like an obligation to go in and play, like if the store sells like bolt action stuff, I wouldn't go in and like play Chain of Command or whatever. I mean, maybe if you're using bolt action minis, but if you're rolling in with your like bullshit 15mm army and playing Chain of Command, you're kind of being a dick to the store. Right?
Yeah. As long as you can trace it back somehow to the store. Sure, we're playing a different rule set, but you could buy the minis here. Then it's okay.
Right. Well,
but there's nothing.
Yeah, like you could buy the dice, I guess? Question mark. So. Yeah, I mean, I guess this has been kind of scattered because I wrote all my notes on just an index card. They're not in order. I guess that's kind of like sums up my thoughts on it. I feel a little bad because this was like really negative sounding, and I don't want to like be a bitch about it. It's just something where I think there are so many cool things about Kickstarter and what it allows people to do, but I think it also it's one of those things where once it exists, it like becomes the default really fast, and people don't always ask if that is good for their specific project or situation. Like just because I remember many years ago, a friend of mine, two friends of mine, we were talking about like creating something. This was just after I had started Nordic Weasel Game. Five Men
Okay.
Normandy was out. And they wanted to do like an RPG thing. Now these two were like the worst possible people to do a project with, because like every week we would like meet to talk about what we were doing, and I would have like done a bunch of stuff, and then they would tell me that they had talked and gotten drunk and had decided that it would be a completely different game. So like one week it would be like an urban fantasy game about like fairies, and the next week it would be like a dark fantasy like dungeon crawl and stuff. It just kept changing, so it was horrible. And there's a reason we didn't do a game. But one of the things was they had both gotten into their head that like we had to kickstart this game, and I kept asking at the time like, but why? We're just doing like a little book that probably will have no artwork, or like, you know, open source or Creative Commons art. Why do we need to kickstart this? And it was literally just because that's what you do when you launching a new role-playing game. You kickstart it. So I think there's just, like I said, there's a tendency for these things to just become the way we do things, and I think that can be dangerous if you're like starting out, or like my interest is always like in the indie guys, because that's, you know, like I've tried a bunch of things and some of them worked, some of them didn't. So, you know, I like to think I can like give a little bit of advice, or, you know, I think it's easy to get like caught up in those traps that, like I was reading a thread on a forum this week where this guy was talking about this card game he wanted to make. And the idea sounded fine. It's like a dungeon crawling card game, or like a fantasy card game. And he had like gotten quotes for like artwork for his card game for like $50,000 or something. It was like an insane amount. Like I get card games because you have to have art on like every card and stuff, but like it was a lot. And he was like trying to figure out how to get this $50,000 for his card game. Is like, don't get $50,000 for your card game. Like, do like a mock-up so you can go out and like, you know, get interest and like get a playtest and get it, you know, do anything you can to like get a playable version out somehow, and then work from there. And also find some artists that won't charge $50,000. Like,
well, I mean,
we didn't.
He didn't say who the artist was. Maybe the artist was his wife.
Well, this is true.
She needs 50,000.
Yeah, and that's a friendship, right? It's a family family discount. Right. So I've been saying one method I've enjoyed is Kickstarters for the fancy edition of the game. Like, this is not a test, where the game is out as a PDF, and Kickstarter was just get a printed book out. That is very true. That being said, I don't know anything about this, but I feel like in some cases that could just as easily be done as print on demand. Although the costs are higher there, so maybe if the people are willing to just pay up front to get it, you know, not POD, I don't know. There's probably a place for that. But again, it's not so much that Kickstarter is like always like the wrong answer, as much as it's not necessarily the automatic answer, right?
I think the two ways you probably will avoid the Kickstarter trap overall is to either be professional so that you know what you're doing, or be something that's just self-contained and easy enough that you don't really have to worry about it. Like the STL people versus the, you know, like the big production people.
Yeah. Like
if you were in the middle, if you've never done it before, then you probably shouldn't kickstart.
Or at least you should have like a very careful think about it. Maybe just reach out to somebody who's done it and see, like, because a lot of people are like pretty happy to talk about like the experiences and stuff. So reach out to somebody. If you were
a failure of Kickstarter, then maybe you can hire out your services.
This is true as a cautionary tale.
That's right.
Or you can kickstart to get another $200,000 so that you can pay off the people that didn't get their box set from the first Kickstarter.
Yeah, that's right.
So pay it backwards, right?
The charity events. Yeah. Let's see.
So
what's Torben got? All card games should do what they did for Doom Trooper, get one painting, then cut out small parts.
They kept that going through multiple Warzone rulebooks as well. I think they just did like a bunch of drawings for like the first edition, and then they just kept using that for everything else.
Print on demand has some limitations on layout, and gubbins, like ribbons for your books, which makes it less enticing.
Yeah,
ribbons for your books.
But yeah, maybe books should be boring and disappointing.
Yeah,
that's how you beat the FOMO cycle. Just make everything like a little worse.
Yeah, It's true grim dark. It's just dark text on dark backgrounds.
Yeah.
Sad.
No pictures, because whatever you can imagine is always more grim dark than what the artist puts in the book.
Yeah, the shadowy sketches.
Yeah. Ink blots. But I guess that's kind of my my thoughts on the topic, as scattered and incoherent as they are. Like, just be kind of cognizant of whether Kickstarter is a good idea or not.
Mm-hmm. And is there a trap for being a customer? I mean, at worst, you don't get what you wanted.
Yeah, I mean,
or you have to wait a long time.
Yeah, you probably, and sometimes both.
Or sometimes you get something you wanted and then you don't want it anymore, and now you have it, and that's that.
Yeah, I think the main thing is just like resisting the FOMO like hype cycle, where you talk yourself into like, I obviously need like 3 box sets of this. Mm-hmm. You probably do not, right?
No. However, one thing I do wish is that I had purchased more of the last Catalyst Games Kickstarter, because the distribution was so terrible, and I got mine so early that I could have easily sold a lot of it.
See, that's
below MSRP and still made money. So
if you're really trying to sell it all off, you have to time it right.
Yeah, exactly. You got to hope for the failures.
Yes, but you have to, because there's like, you got to sell like a couple of days before everyone else does. Like cryptocurrency or whatever. If you're like the last one holding the bag, then you're fucked. I hope you enjoy your like space robot minis that nobody likes.
Nobody wants them.
But yeah, that's it. And also, my phone is running out of battery, and we're about at an hour, which is how long my phone's battery lasts when doing video chat.
The perfect timer.
Yeah, it's a limiting factor on how long the podcast stream episode
heart attack
could be. It's a little slow to like pick up. Oh, we're just like getting no hearts.
Maybe when you pull it apart. Yeah, there. You have to pull it apart.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. You have to be like expanding, because your heart has to like, oh my god,
explode. Yes. More hearts.
Oh, and Lancelot is pushing my phone around.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for stopping by. At the peak, we had 9 viewers, which is pretty phenomenal.
That is more than 8, and it is way more than 7.
Yeah, which is what we're at right now, and that's at the end. So,
hey, thank you so much, everybody. If you're watching this tomorrow, don't be afraid to leave a comment. We try to respond to, if not all of them, then most of them.
Usually, I will like it, and Ivan will respond.
That is how we do things. And if you get the expensive package on Kickstarter, we will even say something nice.
Ooh, yeah, but in like 3 years from now.
Yeah. Like, it takes a while. The comments are all like written in China.
That's right.
It was cheap.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.